Valentine's Day. The time of year where social media gets flooded with posts that remind us of just how lonely we actually are. And as we doom scroll past influencers pressuring us to buy overpriced gifts for loved ones we may or may not actually have, the rest of us are spending our time and money on more cultured pursuits. Either simping on VTubers, chatting with AI girlfriends, or worse. And then there's me. A grown man hiding his age behind a cartoon avatar, ranting about a 25-year-old dating sim from my childhood. I'll admit, nostalgia no doubt plays a part in my opinion, and sure, modern games are much better at supercharging them dopamine receptors. But the waifu gachas of today lack a certain nuance when it comes to making characters feel more, and the irony is not lost on me here, three-dimensional. Now before you ask, yes, I am happily married, but before you judge me for replaying Tokimeki Memorial 2 instead of taking my significant other out for dinner, let me ask you this. When was the last time a modern game made you feel genuinely connected to its characters? And how dare you assume I have enough money to play a game that came out recently? Anyways, whether you're here for the nostalgia, the waifus, or just because of the algorithm's blessing, Tokimeki Memorial 2 has something to teach us. Well, maybe not about real relationships, but about what we've lost and how games portray them. A short disclaimer though, I'm not a game dev, just an enthusiast, and there are so many better playthroughs and deep dives of Tokimeki Memorial out there, so before my imposter syndrome sets in, it's time to grab a seat. Let's talk about how this game captured the kind of romance modern media doesn't seem to know how to write anymore. Hello folks, it's me, I'm Biggy, I'm back. And I'm an old school Let's Player who's been around long enough to remember when walkthroughs came in magazines. I returned to streaming because, like many recently disabled people, finding stable income has been an uphill battle. And this video is part of my effort to keep up with the algorithm so I don't completely disappear. But beyond that, I've always been into obscure gaming titles, and AI translation has completely changed the game when it comes to revisiting old, untranslated RPGs. Growing up in Southeast Asia, I played plenty of Japanese games I did not fully understand. But now, with the AI translation, I can experience these games in a way that was previously impossible, uncovering hidden details, lost context, and layers of storytelling that were once locked behind a language barrier. It's like rediscovering my childhood all over again, and I want to share that with you. So if that sounds interesting, or if you just want to watch Google Translate fail spectacularly in real time, like the video, subscribe for more, and click the bell or follow me on Twitch to catch my streams when I go live. With that out of the way, let's rewind the clock back to the late 90s when dating sims had their golden age. The original Tokimeki Memorial wasn't just a dating sim. It was the flagship title that defined its genre. Talents like Kazuya Niino, who later went on to direct A-Train Odyssey, Miki Higashino, the same person responsible for Suikoden series' legendary music, was doing the soundtrack. Koji Igarashi, yes, that guy behind Castlevania Symphony of the Night, was writing side content for it. With this absolute dream team behind it, Tokimeki Memorial was a massive success. It was a sleeper hit, so much so that Konami greenlit sequel after sequel, and it was set to be the next big thing in gaming, and it's gone. The genre's gone. Completely. Look, all you young'uns out there, before Ubisoft, before EA, before Sony ruining our favorite franchises, Konami was there to set the standard. With Tokimeki Memorial being massive success, Konami did what Konami did best: take a beloved, groundbreaking IP and absolutely drive it into the ground. Tell me if this sounds familiar. A publisher has no idea why their game was successful in the first place, started making changes no one asked for, rushed production, shove in half-baked ideas, misjudge what fans actually want. By the time Tokimeki Memorial 3 rolled around, the series has gone from Spider-Man to Morbius. The collapse was so bad, not only did it effectively end the franchise, but it killed the genre as a whole. Yes, I know there were more sequels, spiritual successors, and the girl version of the games were wildly successful. But to keep the video from veering off topic too much, I'd rather save this topic as a separate video, if I ever make one. Also, before we move on, Quick round of applause for Ubisoft. Amongst the many L's they've taken for misunderstanding Japanese culture, who would have thought the toxic work culture was the one that managed to successfully replicate?
Emotional damage!
Now, you might have noticed that I completely skipped over Tokimeki Memorial too, and that's because somehow, in between Konami completely mismanaging the franchise, they actually managed to catch lightning in the bottle with this title, because unlike what came after, it was an experiment, an ambitious attempt to take everything that made the first game special and crank it up to 11, and the result? A game so packed with technical innovations and sheer charm that even Konami couldn't ruin it. And that's why we're here, to highlight exactly what made Tokimeki Memorial 2 stand out in a way no dating sim has before or since. So let's turn back the clock, boot up the game, and let's see what made the game so special, shall we? Starting with basic gameplay. The game takes place over 3 years of high school, where you pick various different tasks for your characters to do over the school day, from studying art, science, literature, or doing sports or club activities, while calling girls up on weekends to ask them out on dates. The success of the date depends on the location and the dialogue trees you pick. Raising your stats increase your likability amongst all the girls, while going on dates increase how close you are as a couple. Beware though that as other girls like you more, they get a bomb placed on them, which you could defuse by asking them out on dates, but if you ignore them for too long, the bomb explodes, tanking all your relationships with it. That's not all you do though, as the game is littered with things like minigames and Easter eggs that keep gameplay refreshing. After 3 years of juggling dating locations and girls, if you play your cards right, you would spend Christmas Eve with the girl you romance the most and end the game with a confession of love during graduation. You are then rewarded with an album showcasing all the various in-game events related to that girl, as well as an interview with their voice actress. But the game isn't just a waifu collectathon. It's the little things that make Tokimeki Memorial 2 feel alive. Let's start with the aesthetics. First of all, if you thought the artwork looked familiar, that's because Konami went all in and got Akira Otsuka, who was the designer behind the Tale series, which was Konami's flagship RPG at the time, to design the characters, and although I personally love the art style, whether you love it or hate it, it is unarguably well-defined and recognizable. Another really neat detail is that the characters blink. That might not sound impressive, but in a genre where characters can often feel like static cardboard cutouts, those subtle movements go a long way in making them feel human. Another neat detail are the references to popular in gaming culture. You might be talking to a girl or out on a date, when suddenly you run into thugs and fight a random encounter Final Fantasy style. Or play a goldfish scooping minigame, only to meet a giant mechanical catfish that, get this, parodied an IP that belonged to their competitor, which was wild. Then there's the voice acting. Like the first game, every single character in this game is fully voiced and lip-synced with every dialogue, which is practically unheard of. And if that wasn't ambitious enough, the game goes a step further with text-to-speech. Yes, it doesn't just give you the option to input your name, your waifus will actually say it. This alone was a monumental undertaking, requiring thousands of voice lines for the countless possible name combinations. And the result? The game needed one whole extra memory card to fit the generated voice file and used 1 out of 5 CDs to create the audio for 2 of the 13 available girls, while the others are available separately for purchase on 3 separate CDs. So yes, this game had one of the earliest examples of DLC. But technically they weren't downloaded, so CDCs? CDs, but it's not just the technical feats that make Tokimeki Memorial 2 special. These features are all in service for creating a deep connection with the characters, making them memorable, relatable, and worth your time. So without further ado, let's start by talking about all the characters I romanced live on stream. Starting with my favorite, Akai Homura. Back when I first played this game as a kid, she was one that stood out to me the most, and now after revisiting the game decades later, I can confidently say she's still the most fun. As far as first impressions go, she does leave quite an impact. As we are rushing to make it in time for school, she leaps out, stops us at the gates, introduces herself as a student council president with a superhero monologue, and makes us both late. Immediately a few things are established. First of which, she's an idiot. And I mean that in the best way possible. Because now we don't need to take her so seriously. Not to mention, she's gonna wear her heart on her sleeve, so she's gonna be easy to read. She laughs heartily when we say things she likes, will definitely kick our ass whenever we don't. Plus, she's an anime fan, but not just any anime fan. She's a mecha anime fan, and you can see the devs cramming as many references as they can into her character. Her theme song is a direct reference to Getter Robo, which is the most iconic mecha, introducing the world to, amongst other things, mecha combinations and drills. In fact, she packs one of her own, and will be on the receiving end of that whenever we cross her the wrong way. She also radiates tomboy energy, and the devs absolutely cooked to try to fit as many tomboy tropes into her as possible. Let's list some of them. 1. When we first met her as a kid, she gets mistaken for a boy. 2. They decided to stunt her growth at 4'11", making her an absolute pint-sized powerhouse, able to dropkick somebody twice her own size, and simultaneously keeping her boyish in appearance to justify having somebody of her body type. And thus, the devs are able to reward us by putting her in situations that make our hearts skip a beat. Getting to see her sleepwalk in a penguin onesie. Wearing yukatas in kimonos in special occasions. Or, after getting used to the fact that she does not blush, she turns absolutely beet red when she realizes we're watching her eating. The most extreme example of this being her Christmas event, when she snuck into a party wearing a dress. Her confession scene was also absolutely memorable because instead of doing it in private, she decides to say it in front of the entire school during the graduation ceremony, which is no surprise why she ranks so highly amongst popularity polls and why I personally consider her best girl. Moving on is another character I really enjoy, Ichimonji Akane. If Homura was the most fun, Akane was definitely the most down-to-earth. And her story was rewarding in a completely different way. She comes over to meet us, asking for studying tips, but things started to reveal themselves once we start asking her out on dates. She always seems busy, constantly turns us down because of part-time work. She has a soft spot dealing with things like her family, and she has an older brother she also dotes on. And during dates in places like the night parade, she reminisces about time she spent with family, especially with her parents, hinting at their absence. And that's when you realize that she's struggling and shouldering the financial burdens of the family, working, taking care of her home, looking after her older brother, all whilst going to high school. Dating her, you feel motivated to be someone better, to be someone who provides for your family, or maybe get a higher education, perhaps, to get a better job, so she doesn't seem to have to struggle so much. To get to go home and be a family man. Or you could just be like me originally, I have no shame in admitting this, hypnotized by them high beams. And the game devs are definitely having their cake and eating it too by putting her in a skimpy bikini with the excuse that she can't afford a larger one. Absolutely shameless, and I love it. But here's the best part. The game tricks you into thinking her romance will be easy, when in fact, it's one of the hardest characters to finish. Remember when I said earlier that this game had random encounters with delinquents as a minigame, Final Fantasy style? Well, after a while, you start getting letters of challenge against the 4 Heavenly Kings, because of course boss battles are a thing in this game. At first, these fights seem completely unrelated, but you start piecing things together, or if you just know the ending already, you realize these scripted fights are part of Akane's storyline. Because eventually, as the final boss of this delinquent gauntlet appears, it turns out this legendary final boss is Akane's older brother. The reason you've been jumped all this time? Her brother has been testing you and trying to see if you're worthy of dating his precious little sister. And how does Akane respond to all this, you ask? By one-shotting him with a single punch, proving once and for all that she is the strongest character. It's interesting enough that the game has a ton of Easter eggs baked into these Final Fantasy type fights, but to actually include it as a part of one character's arc is ingenious. And unless you train properly, you won't be able to win this fight and you'll fail to finish her character properly. And here's the kicker. You won't be able to realize any of this unless you play through her character multiple times and going through all of the various dialogue options, good or bad. And she's one of the best characters to highlight how subtle storytelling works well in a game like this one, whilst delivering a wonderful punchline at the end, pun intended. Last but not least, I have to talk about a character that I might actually get emotional over, because romancing this character back in the day changed me as a person. It left me with the most impact. I'm talking about Yae Kaori. In popularity polls, Yae Kaori ranked second right behind the main heroine, which took the developers by complete surprise because they never expected her to be that popular. And when you dig into the storyline, it's easy to see why. At first glance, Kaori seems like the classic kudere, the quiet, reserved, distant girl. If you are a fan of Rei Ayanami back in the day, congratulations, she might be right up your alley. But then the game asks, how did she get that way? Simply put, she's a walking red flag. You first meet her on the rooftops while she's there by herself. Her song is a melancholic minor key melody, reinforcing her sadness. She isn't part of any sports club despite being very athletic. On dates, she feels emotionally absent, and her dialogue choices never seems to leave a good impression. And during rainy days, you would sometimes catch her walking without an umbrella. But the worst part? If you meet her and decide not to romance her or interact with her at all, she leaves school, never to return. And here's the real kicker. Originally, her story is meant to be even darker. In an interview with developers, it was revealed that she almost had a storyline where she unalives herself. They ultimately decided to dial it back, feeling it was too dark for a game like this and would completely sour the tone, opting instead, in the end credits, saying that her fate was left unknown. Credit where credit is due though. The genius of that interaction is that when you are faced with that during your first playthrough, you begin to wonder on your second. Could I have done things differently? Could I have saved her? And if you successfully prevented her from leaving school and kept at it for the next 2 years, she reveals the truth during the spring of the third year that she actually had to repeat a grade due to an event that happened during her first year in her previous school before she moved over here. Long story short, she was betrayed by her senior in the volleyball club and took the blame. As she stares at the budding sakura, wondering whether it will be blooming again, our hero comforts her by saying, even though sakura may be late to bloom, they'll bloom eventually, hinting at the fact that things are never too late. The next time we see her, things are a little different. Something in her eye sparks. She's regained her lost confidence. She joins the volleyball club again. And most importantly, the game rewards us for this change by changing her music, making it more uplifting, which seems like a minor change, but it does have a major impact. You get it? They changed from the minor key to a major key in the music? Get it? Oh, okay. Anyways, Kaori ranks so high for me because, like many people at the time, romancing her felt like it actually mattered. She's one of the few characters where your presence genuinely changed her life. She's better off as a person simply because you were there. And that feeling, that idea that you could make a real difference to someone, is incredibly rare to achieve in a dating sim, much less any game in general. In a world right now where we're constantly bombarded with negativity or self-image issues and existential anxieties. There's something undeniably fulfilling about being able to be important to someone, even if that someone is a character in a dating sim. And after playing for a while, I think I got it. Tokimeki Memorial 2 isn't just about pursuing romance and trying to get with a girl. It's about discovering the layers within each of the characters. Each one of them has a front or a persona they present to the world, and it's only when you spend time with them to understand them and care for them that you get to see their more vulnerable side. And I think that's the true reward of the game. It's not just a romantic ending, but a deeper connection that makes characters feel more real. So with all that said, that's just 3 of the 13 romanceable characters. And I understand that not all characters are created equal. There are weak characters, there are strong ones, and maybe you yourself could find the time to give this game a chance. You could use it as an opportunity to learn Japanese, or just look for a rewarding gaming experience that you can't seem to get anywhere else. And whether if you decide to play this game yourself or not, I'm happy that you're here all the way to the end of the video, listening to this old man rambling about the quote-unquote good old days of gaming. And I hope that we'll see each other again in the future, whether on stream or in another video essay like this one. So with that said, it's me, I'm Biggy, and I'll be back. See you guys in a bit. Special thanks to Apulux, Randomanta, Doug Bolden, Rafael Vega Chapa, Techno, and Army Slam for being members at the time of recording. You guys get to watch all my videos early and get some cool badges and emojis whenever you comment. You also get turned into a Pokemon, which is one of the newer perks that I've added to the channel. So if you want to support me in that way, click on the join button below.